is really fear of the unknown. And I don't know if you had situations, but I've had situations where I've been very fearful. And I was like, oh no, I can't do that, I can't do that. And then you step into it, and then you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. You know, that wasn't so scary. I did a lot of the Tony Robbins programs, and I was at one program where we had all these physical activities that we had to do. Well, the first one was walk on fire. It's interesting, we send a newsletter out, and I just didn't give a subject for this weekend. And then our manager said, oh, what is your subject going to be? And did he send an email out? Or okay, but I said, you know, I'm not really sure. I think I'm just going to sort of see what comes up, or see what, I'm just going to let Spirit kind of guide me in the topic today. And sure enough, something came up, and it really inspired me and brought me to really wanting to share talking about this today, and also just bringing perspective. And when you talk about being better to yourself, a lot of this is about being better to yourself, but it's also about learning how to, I guess the only word I could say is to how to truly go deep within and ask yourself, who are you? And, you know, I was inspired a little bit by, I listened to others, other speakers, other individuals, and I was inspired by someone who was talking about what fruit do you bear? Like, what are you all about? What are we all about? Do we say one thing and do another? Or do we truly do what we believe and what we say, and be on that path to learn? Because none of us are perfect. And we will, from time to time, we will stray a little bit about who we think we are. And a lot of times that's due to others. It's due to others who maybe really aren't our friends. We think they're our friends, but perhaps they're not. Perhaps there's an interior motive. Perhaps they have an agenda around you. And, you know, that happens. I know many of you have talked about how you've had to let go of friends or associates or individuals or situations because you realize that it was not really what you thought it was. And when you really look at yourself, so if you think about trees, different kinds of trees like fruit trees. So, you know, an orange tree knows it's an orange tree. And so when that tree grows and as it matures and it produces fruit, and that is the purpose of that tree. Or whether it's a lemon tree, or whether it's strawberries, that they grow and they know that they are a strawberry plant and they're producing their fruit, their pure fruit in terms of who they are. And so I ask you for a moment just to kind of think about, you know, what if I were a tree, what would my fruit be? What would I be? And I was also inspired by someone that I've admired for many, many, many years, a spiritual individual, and have followed them for a long time and know them personally. And I read something just the other night that truly shook me. It completely shook me. And I literally had to look at what I was reading and go, all this time, this individual has never been what I thought they were. Because they wrote something, and they basically said that if you don't believe like this person said, if you don't believe like me, you are an idiot. You are a moron. You are evil. You are the worst person in the world, and a few other words I won't repeat. And when I read that, I thought, I can't believe this is coming out of this person's soul. And I realized in that moment that and that to me, that's at the extreme. That's at the extreme of someone. But then I asked myself, what is this person all about? Are they really all about what they've been preaching or saying or doing all this time? is that really what they really weren't about that? Was I not sensing that? Am I not a spiritual person? Am I not able to sense when something is perhaps right for us or not right for us? And then I realized, we're all raised to please. We're all raised to not want to hurt anyone's feeling. We're raised to sometimes not speak our truth. And so what I realized in that moment is that we're in a time in the world where it is time for us to really say, what is our truth? What is your real truth? And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it really doesn't. And that was this individual's truth. That's their truth. For me, I could look at a lot of things that were said and I could just put them in a different perspective or just basically share that differently, where maybe that opinion, maybe that feeling was a little more compassionate or a little more strong, that says, well, this is what I believe, and here's why I believe it, and here's why, maybe you would or wouldn't believe what I believe. But I realized that, again, even what's happening now in the spiritual world, there are people now that are starting the energy to divide the spiritual world. And I'm seeing it now. And I'm hearing people say, we're in a spiritual revolution. We are now having to, so now you have spiritual people calling other spiritual out because they don't believe like they believe. And I step back and go, what is the purpose of being spiritual? It's to be compassionate. It's to be accepting. It's to bring peace. It's to literally recognize that you may not agree with someone, but it's okay not to agree, but to do it in a peaceful way. And I've seen too many posts. I'm in a lot of spiritual groups, and I read and watch. One, because I just want perspective. Two, I want to be able to see both sides, because I am a believer. We should always step into both sides of an opinion, of a situation, because we might learn something. We might find that maybe we don't really believe what we think we believe, or we might find that we don't really act the way we think we act. And so what happens is we become like, we put blinders on, like this is the only way I can be. And I truly believe that you have to be as honest with yourself and as a person that you can be. You work hard in doing that. But there are those out there, there are people out there, a lot of psychologists call them narcissists, who are very, it's all about me, it's all about being self-centered, and they love to manipulate people. They love to create drama. It happens everywhere. I know you've all been in workplaces where it is. So there's always a drama person. There's always someone that is creating a lot of drama. And you have to really be able to look at that and to ask yourself, maybe the first thing you ask is, okay, how can I maybe understand what that person is going through? Because maybe they're going through something and they just don't know how to act out their emotions. Maybe they don't know how to deal with something that's going on in their life. And yet they're bringing some kind of drama, say, into the workplace, or the drama into a friends group, or into an organization, because it's something going on with them. And to me, the first step is to try to understand. To try to understand, why is someone doing that, what they're doing? But the next step is to make a decision. How can you stay out of that energy? How can you stay in your energy of who you are? And to also be compassionate and acknowledge and be willing to understand. And sometimes we're just not willing to understand. If you think about when we're young, when our parents say, you can't do something, and then you're like, but I want to, I'm going to do this. But sometimes we don't understand that's a form of protection. That's a form of love, because they're protecting us. And maybe that's just their way, it's their perspective, but sometimes we become so rebellious that we don't want to listen to what the other side of something might be. And I truly believe that the only way that we will ultimately move to stepping into peace, and we will, But we have to look at the anger and the resistance and the manipulation that we've all done at some point. We've all done. But we have to look at that and say, how can we balance that? How can we first balance ourselves? How can we first say, what is my fruit? If I go around telling everybody, look, there's this organization, I support it, I believe in it, and I tell everybody, please donate. But I have to ask myself, did I donate first? Did I? Am I the one? Am I truly stepping into what I believe? And I know people that promote certain things, but yet they never take any action and they never participate. And I ask myself that question sometimes, why is that? And maybe they are passionate about something, and they're very passionate, and then they're like, okay, that's how I exist. That's my fruit. My fruit is helping others understand or helping others support an organization or a business or a person, or an individual. And I know that, like even if today we're in social media, we're out in the world, and right now there's so many great causes in the world. We can't support them all. It's impossible. And I say pick something that you believe in. Pick something that you can do something for or do good, if that's what you want to do. But pick that and then be your true self with it. Be your true self. If you support, some people, they support their family because they believe that now that they're in a position that they could succeed and they were able to bring a good revenue into their life, and they support their family. They're like, this is something I can do. This is something that I feel like I'm being worthy, and I'm doing that in a great way. And as I said before, we just can't support everything. And but as I look back and I think about like my friend that I've admired for so long, I ask myself, where did all that come from? Because I've always known them to be kind of a very, typically a person that would look at both sides of things and say, well, here's where I agree, here's where I don't agree. And that's what brought me to this place, that how are we spiritually committing to who we are? Are we really committing to a spiritual, and it doesn't always have to be what I call a full lifestyle, but do we have a spiritual commitment to ourselves, in that we stop ourselves if we find ourselves being maybe out of sync, or we find ourselves staying around people that maybe have an underlying agenda about us or about others, or they're doing things that aren't comfortable. Maybe they're saying things or their actions, or I've been in the corporate world for many, many years, and there were many times in the business world where there are individuals who would start a little story about someone. Just a little comment here, a little comment there, and the next thing you know, everybody's saying, oh, that person is, isn't very competent, isn't doing their job, so forth. But you realize later that's not it at all. It was a story that was built by someone else, but everybody started believing it. And so I realized that it's time for us to really tap into ourselves and ask ourselves, are we able to stay grounded? Can you stay grounded? Can you say, I may not agree with something, but I'm okay with that. I respect the other person. I respect whatever, because we're definitely in this world where there's, even in religion, we all know in religion is that, every organization thinks that they're the only one that has God, and realistically, God's kind of there for all of us. And, but, that's their belief, and that's okay. It just may not be your belief, or it's not my belief, or however, but we have to ask ourselves, what is our connection to our spiritual life, to our spiritual, I want to say spiritual power, because we do have spiritual power. And we want to use that in the most effective, the most compassionate, the most loving way that we can. And, I heard someone say one time that, if there's a person on the side of the road and they're collecting money, that, if you don't give them something, you're just not a good person. And I thought, well, sometimes I just don't have money in my car. It's not that I don't care about that person. In that moment, I just didn't have change or a dollar, and I certainly wasn't going to give him my credit card. So the point is that you have to look at where you anchor yourself. And then also say, well, that was just a situation, the man was there, and I truly had compassion for him or her. And, it doesn't mean that I'm not a compassionate person. So I guess what I'm asking is that it's important to really, we talked about negativity, we talked about our self-talk, but I think it's time to also do a self-inventory of who are we, what are we, what is our spiritual commitment to ourselves. And again, I'm not saying that people are good or bad, because I think we are what we are. And, we might perceive someone as bad, but they're not bad. It's just our opinion. It's just our opinion. Or we might perceive someone as good, and they're really good. And so you have to ask yourself to really start to learn to feel the energy. To know this is a place that I am to be. This is a place maybe that doesn't feel as comfortable for me anymore. And again, because we want to be nice, because we want to say, oh, it's okay. Well, it's not okay. It's not okay if there's something going on that makes you feel uncomfortable. And so you think about, like I said, and I actually really, I'm inspired by what I read from my friend, because actually it inspired me. It's like, wow, maybe I really need to take a really good hard look at myself. I mean, where is there what I believe, where would there be truth in what that person is saying? Where could I find truth? And where could I find what doesn't feel like truth to me? Because I felt like it was worth looking at. I felt like it was worth feeling. How does this feel? And I came out of with sort of a different feeling and understanding. And then that gave me the food for thought today to really think about that. And, sometimes we go into a place with ourselves that we're not sure where we're going. But I also know that sometimes that's the time when you should just be guided. That you should just let yourself be guided. Trust in your own spiritual connection. And last night, we had an art reception last night, and afterwards a friend of mine who was down here from out of town had said, can we go to dinner? And I was like, yeah, let's go to dinner. And during that conversation, she was asking a lot about the fact that she wants to leave her corporate job and really become a full-time artist. And she's also a massage therapist. And as I was listening to her, she kept going, I know everything. I know I can do this, but I'm terrified. I just can't make that move from the corporate world into doing this work. And I said, well, what do you think your real purpose is? Or how do you feel at work? She said, I feel terrible. She goes, I don't even like my job. I hate getting up in the morning and going to work. And I said, and you're doing this every day? Yeah, I'm doing it every day. And I said, so what is it that's keeping you from stepping into your new opportunities, your new purpose? What is it? Maybe it's money. For her, she was kind of like, well, it's kind of money, but, I've saved a lot of money. I've prepared myself to leave the corporate world and hopefully start my own business and live my purpose. And she said, but it's this deep fear. And I said, it's the deep fear of not trusting yourself. You don't trust yourself. And you have to trust, and she says, yes, I'm a spiritual person. I'm like, yes, I know you are. But you have to trust a little more. You have to trust when you feel good about things. You have to trust when you don't feel so good about things. You have to ask yourself, what would be my next step? And also ask yourself, how could any of you be, how could you be an inspiration to others? It could just be a conversation with someone. It could just be listening to someone. You know, and I love the idea of sitting and talking with someone who thinks completely differently than I do. It's very enlightening at times when you can sit and have that conversation and you start to see the other perspective of others. But that's also protecting yourself. Instead of, you know, you look at, where does my energy feel good? You know, if you're, like we talk about being in a like-minded group. Well, if one of you here said, I'm just not feeling so good about that group, you know, that girl Sharron, I'm not so sure I like what she's talking about, you know, so maybe that's not the right group for me. And that is something that we should all be kind of inventorying. You know, we participate in a lot of things that we really don't want to participate in, but we just do it because we think we're supposed to do it, or we think that, or we're being pushed to do it. And I know that comes from sometimes from being told by others that, you know, you should be involved in this or you should be involved in that. And we really have to make that decision. But sometimes we do have to step beyond a little bit into our fears. And that's what my friend was talking about. And I asked her eventually, I said, well, the question is that, are you really committed to living your purpose? Or are you just committed to staying in an environment that no longer serves you, that no longer brings you joy, that no longer lights you up? And whereas in the beginning, when she was in that career, she felt that way. She felt that this was the right track. She felt she loved what she did. But over the years, she's now lost that desire. She's lost that feeling of, I'm being lit up by being in this industry. And now, right before her is an opportunity to truly do an inventory of, what do I really want in my life, and how do I step into that? But fear, that fear comes up, that big block. Fear is really fear of the unknown. And I don't know if you had situations, but I've had situations where I've been very fearful. And I was like, oh no, I can't do that, I can't do that. And then you step into it, and then you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. You know, that wasn't so scary. I know that, like I said, I did a lot of the Tony Robbins programs. And I was at one program where we had all these physical activities that we had to do. Well, the first one was walk on fire. And even though you will read in the paper, you will read on the internet that you can't do that. That it's got to be fake. They're just really, those aren't coals burning. And let me tell you, those are coals. Real, live coals. There's no trick to it. There's nothing. It's all a mindset. And the mindset, and I've done it like 5 times. And I will tell you this. First, they just have you walk a short one. But as you get further into the program, you walk a longer one, and then you walk a longer one. And I remember, you have to have a mindset. There is a process you go through. And when you stand there ready to go, there's a person there, and they will know if you're ready or not. And so as you walk across, your mindset is that I'm not going to be burned. This will not burn me. And so I remember one time when I walked across, and at the end of the coals, they have people there with a water hose, and they spray your feet, because as you walk, the coals will actually stick to your sides of your feet sometimes. And they're not burning you in that moment, okay? It's I can't explain it, but but they have to spray them off. They have to get them off. Well, what happened was they sprayed, and some of the coals landed up on my arm. And when they did, it burned me. And I was like, whoa. And I didn't know at first what it was, because it's kind of dark when you're doing this. And afterwards, I realized that the coals had burned my arm a little bit. And even then I knew, I was like, this is real. This is real. And yet there are people that say it's not real. You can't do that. But I know it is. So that's why I say sometimes you have to experience, you have to do an inventory. Because at one point, I was like, no, that's got to be fake. You can't do that. There's no way anyone can do that. But thousands of people have done that. So, again, this is where sometimes, you have to really ask yourself, is what I'm hearing, is what I'm doing, is what someone is saying to me, someone is, their behavior or their participation, is what is happening and what they're saying, is that really true or is it not? And this is where we have to dig deep. We have to dig deep, and we have to actually connect ourselves to our own truth. And, even today, there's all kinds of things that we can do to be, shall I say, honest with ourselves. I mean, think about how many times have you embellished something about yourself, and then you kind of know, well, that wasn't really true, but it sounded good. It made me look good. Here's my resume, and yeah, I can make that look really good. But then the reality is that now you got to perform to that. So if you say it, then you got to do it. And it's like we cross that line. We talk about the little white lies. And I do believe sometimes, yeah, it's like, okay, so we say there's Santa Claus, but eventually there isn't a Santa Claus, Then our kids want to know, well, why isn't there one anymore? So it's all about taking an inventory of who you are, what you believe, in anything you believe in what you do, your career, how you act every day, the friends that you have, and to be more present with who do you want to surround yourself with, who do you want to surround yourself with, and continue to grow, and so that your fruits, your personality, your spirit, your life is vibrant and full. And that you wake up every day feeling good about who you are. And that goes back to self-talk. To tell yourself, I'm going to explore today. I'm going to explore me. I'm going to understand me. And we talk about scripting and manifesting and wanting things in our life. But I always thought about, maybe I should script what kind of friends I want. Maybe I should talk about my circle of friends. Or the kind of, even here, I know that in the work that I do here, I made an agreement with Spirit in the beginning, and I said, I want to do whatever I can to share, my information. However, I really want people that want to transform. I want people that are ready to do the work. I would love to attract people that say, I'm ready. I'm ready to change or to step into something new. I'm ready to take action. And I get that. I mean, I look at all of you. You're here to take action. That's why you're here. And you're not here just to listen and go out in the world and be totally different. You're actually, many of you, as you said today, I've come in, I've listened to things, and it's helped me, or it's given me new perspective, or it's given me new ideas. And even in my other work, when I work with people one-on-one, I rarely get someone that works with me that says, well, yeah, I just can't do it. I just can't do the work. And I'm kind of like, well, but it's important. Take the action. When you take the action, things will change. So the next time that you feel an energy that maybe you feel like this person is just really not a person that really does care about me. There's an agenda here somewhere. I heard many people say that they have a circle of friends, and then they start finding that there's one friend that maybe starts making comments about them, or comments about others, or maybe that friend is never there when you need them. Maybe that friend is only interested in you when you're there for them, and that's their agenda. You're only for them, but they're not for you. And it's important to recognize that. And because there are people out there that would be your friend. They would be a true friend. And there are coworkers that would be true friends and be good coworkers and would be a team and would be like we call like-minded people, everyone working together, everyone contributing their skills, their talents, and the things that they have to offer, that a team can grow. You look at sports teams, everybody has a role, and if they all work that particular role, they know they are. A forward knows they're a forward. A guard knows they're a guard, and that's their job. Their job is to guard, not to shoot. That's their job. And so you ask yourself, what's my role? What's my role in my team of life? And who do I want on my team? And can I be more open-minded as I build my team and really look at what supports me and who supports me energetically? So I'd like to open this up if you're open to it, but I'd like to just talk a little bit about what did you do? Or how did you react in the moment? Have you had situations where either you were uncomfortable somewhere or around people, or you started to notice that things weren't as they seemed? And then the actions or the steps that you took. Anybody? Yes, Fran.
Well, you mentioned manifesting at some point, and I'm currently having to take a self-inventory of myself, even spiritually, because I realize when you're manifesting, like you said, there's a lot of action behind it. And I just thought it would come to me. So I am trying to fulfill these things that I want with more action. And then personally, there is a scenario in my life where I've been compartmentalizing it more in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's making me question my whole spiritual belief, and it's making me question what I do and don't believe, and what fits right for me, what doesn't fit right with me, and it's kind of scaring me, because when you view yourself a certain way for a while, and then that gets into question spiritually, and your whole understanding of what it means to be a spiritual person, it's kind of scary, But this week I realized manifestation comes when you're putting action for it. You can't just get something and just it fall out of the blue sky. You know what I mean? You have to work for it. But I would have to say my self-inventory with myself is everything that, I was comfortable with spiritually, even being in a space like this is being questioned a lot. And it's not that I don't like it anymore, it's just being questioned, because I'm categorizing things differently, my scenarios differently, and looking at it in a completely different way, which might bring me to an understand my trauma that I've gone through. I'm not putting it into a spiritual box anymore. I'm saying it's my trauma. And when I do that, I think differently.
Yeah.
More of in a clinical way. Whereas it was more open and floaty.
Yeah.
So now that it's not open and floaty, I'm becoming more grounded into a different scenario. And that's a whole new thing for me.
Yeah, and sometimes I think about times that maybe some of you, friends or family or someone has questioned, you're involved in this, you're not, maybe they're very involved in the church, and then they're saying to you, oh, that's not good energy, going to that shop or being around people that are what we call more metaphysical, spiritually, more metaphysically spiritual, where people want to question your motives. The reality is you should be questioning yourself too. And if you truly believe that this is the right thing for you, then you should be in a place of power to say, no, this is who I am. You have no right to question me. You have no right to say that what I'm doing is not right. I have the right to question what's right for me and what's wrong for me. And that's where we've been manipulated or programmed in life to respond to what people think we need versus what we think we need. And so that's where it comes into standing up for yourself. But you do have to kind of do an inventory and say, this is who I am. I remember when I first stepped into this industry, I was a little hesitant because I was afraid of judgment. I was totally afraid of judgment. And then I realized that the only person judging me was me. Others were judging me because I was carrying that energy, because I was carrying my own judgment. Once I said, you know what, I really don't care what anybody thinks about me and my spiritual beliefs. That's who I am. And them questioning me on a regular basis is manipulation. And that's when I want to use this word a lot. We're being manipulated by, friends, family, and we have to pay attention to that. You have to pay attention and recognize when you're being manipulated. And it could be anything. It could be religion. Because all of a sudden someone in the church says, you're wrong because you're stepping into something that really touches your heart. Because only this can touch your heart. And that's where we have to become stronger in our own self. And this is where you have to recognize when people are using manipulation to try to convince you that you're wrong because you don't think like them. And it's on both sides of what we call light and dark. It's on both sides. And so to yourself, you're going through a series. And manifestation, in my viewpoint, is truly having trust and faith. And then taking the action that is needed that will guide you there. But it's like, I could say, I need millions of dollars in my business. Well, that also means I probably should develop a strategy to start working on that. Because if I believe that this business should have millions and millions of dollars, and I believe that Spirit says, yes, this is of deserving, I got to do my part now. But my biggest part is trusting. My biggest part is trusting. And sometimes this comes up, and I don't have an answer for this, I will say this. But a lot of people say, we were praying and praying and praying for that individual in the hospital, and they passed. But we prayed, and yes, they did, and that is energy. But we also don't know what the path that individual is on. And I might decide all of a sudden, I got to have millions and millions and millions of dollars in here, and I just start working really hard to make it happen. That may not really be the path. But I also have to recognize that. But there's nothing wrong with being compassionate. There's nothing wrong with, like I said, I also know instances where prayer has created miracles. Where people who are in situations where doctors said they'll never walk again. And guess what? People prayed and prayed for them, and they walked. So again, it's about the path that you're also on.
I wanted to say one more thing, because I'm really interested in what you have to say about this, is like, with my mental health, right, with the schizophrenia, I always thought it was a gift. And I developed my spiritual understanding of what God looked like due to that. And now, with my more involvement in like the mental health community, I'm starting to classify it like a slight difference more into a box of it just being mental health. And the guy that I get obsessed with in my head, more like my trauma. So there is a less floaty kind of understanding of it where I get to play with it every day, and it's kind of more grounded, and it's almost like it's not fun anymore, but it's a new sense of like what grounded means, which really put the fire behind all my spirituality kind of like simmered down. So it's like my spirituality is really simmered down, and maybe even the manifestation around what I need to look spiritually is different. Maybe I'm in a new journey, and that's what I don't like.
Well, and I keep in mind, and I certainly don't want to put down the medical industry, but the mental health industry does not believe in spirituality.
Yeah. Okay?
It's very clinical, and that's okay. That's how they're trained, that's what they've learned. But again, you are the one that has to make those decisions. And it's like I'm not saying you're being manipulated, because I don't think you are, but I do believe that you're taking on the beliefs of others, which may be right for you. I don't know. I think you have to migrate to what feels right for you. And if that makes you feel better, that's grounding you. That's helping you. You're seeing progress in that, and you're able to really move forward in your life, then that's the thing for you. That's what you should be doing. Maybe this energy, or maybe what you thought the spiritual energy was going to save or correct or repair everything in your life, maybe that really wasn't the full step. The point is, I'm a believer in integrating both. I'm a believer in taking information, like, believe me, I believe in hospitals, and I believe in doctors, especially if you're in a critical state. But I also believe that you can integrate the two. You can bring the two together. But you have to decide what's right for you. Yeah. And that may be the grounding piece for you right now. And so, but again, this goes back to what I said. You have to look at what's working for you. What is it that's really working? What gives you a sense of confidence? What gives you the sense of being stronger, maybe powerful, like I said, confident and believing in yourself? What is it that helps you do that? Then that's the right thing for you.
I think the whole reason why I struggle behind that is because when I was spiritually chasing after it, there was a motive behind it to get what I wanted. And now that motive is gone. And I do agree, like, they are integrated for me. Like, I still believe it's a gift. I still believe I'm connected in a way that most people are not connected. But it's that motive that's gone. And that's where the floatiness is not, I'm not interacting with that part of my own psychological makeup anymore. Yeah. So.
And also too, think about this, if we're running towards something because we want it to give us something, and we're looking for it to happen rapidly, it's like, oh, I need to manifest, $100,000 in 6 months. And the reality is that, and then you don't get that, well, you can't always say, well, it was because I was in this industry. You have to look at maybe there's a reason that didn't happen. Or perhaps maybe I didn't trust in myself enough. Or perhaps, I've seen people casually say, I really would love this in my life, and they let it go, and 3 months later it appears, it comes forth. But also too, they kind of put that out, and they trusted that would happen at some point. But they moved forward in their life. They continued to move forward. So I think what you're saying is really good. I believe that, again, ask yourself, where are you being perhaps, and I keep using the word manipulated, but manipulation is when someone kind of does something to get you to do something different. And that's kind of what manipulation is. And sometimes it's a behind-the-scenes agenda. I use that term a lot. I don't have a personal agenda here on this situation. Especially when I work with clients. I can see things that I know that clients can achieve. However, it's up to them to determine how they're going to do that. It's not my place to do that. It's not my place to say, you could be this, and here, if you do this, 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 and this, I really want to see you do this, and they just don't do that. It becomes, if I want it more than they want it, it's my agenda. It becomes my agenda, not theirs. And that's where you also have to ask yourself, how much do you want something? And it has to be your energy of how you want it, not how someone else wants it for you. You have to let that go. And it's even, we deal with that in relationships. We deal with that, how many people have you known in marriages that says, I know he can change, or I know she can change. And they want it more than the person wants it. The person doesn't want to change, but we want them to change. And so that's what is called a hidden agenda. It's when you want something more for someone than they want it for themselves, because it becomes your energy. And that's where you have to step back and say, oh, wow, that was my agenda all of a sudden. I got to stop that. And you have to let it go. And honestly, sometimes when you let it go and you recognize, I can't change anyone, but I can change my behavior. And when I change my behavior, they have to respond differently to me. And that might be, someone that is, You know, maybe there's someone that's let's just take it at work, someone that's always gossiping, and you're listening. You know, you're listening, but you're thinking, why does that person do that? They need to stop that. They need to stop that. But realistically, what you do is you should turn and walk away. You don't need to listen to that kind of talk. And when you walk away, if everybody walks away, guess what? They don't have an audience. And now they have to react differently. They have to be different. If no one listens to them, then they don't have an audience to talk to. So this is where, again, start to get really clear. I know you all are. This is why you're here. This is why you do a lot of the things that you do out in the world, is you're learning about yourself. And I'm going to say, I've been around for a long time, and I thought I knew a lot about myself. And I still don't know a lot of things. And I probably will never know until I pass on. And even then, I probably won't know. But the point is, we are always growing. We are always learning. We're always able to produce what I call produce fruit. And then we should ask ourselves, what kind of fruit do we want to produce? And what does that look like? And we'll always be growing, always be developing. So, anyone else? Any other thoughts around this? Or
Yeah, so just a couple of things you're talking about. The place, so the church, or it's a congregation, it's UU. And when I've been there for like 3 years, when I first started there, I'm like, oh, I found my people. And it's, you know, I've done UU before, but this is a congregation, they just have more heart, it seemed like. But anyway, in the past, I'll say 6 months, different things have happened where people were nasty to me from like different kind of departments, like the music person and this person and that person. And it's like, by the 4th time that happened, I'm like, we got a culture problem here. This thing's going on. And it like really hurt, and so I had to take a step back and go, is this the place for me? And when I sat back and thought about it, I was like, you know, there's always been things about this that didn't quite fit, but there were other things that did.
yes.
And then so anyway, I'm in a period of transition where I'm like, okay, the pagan group is working for me, so I'll do pagan group stuff. But everything else I'm letting go for right now and just see how I feel about things. But And then like yesterday, this thing happened. So I lead the pagan group. So we were doing our Beltane ritual yesterday. And like I have been thinking of myself as a crone for a couple of years. And my dad passed away a couple of years ago. And that changed my role as a person. I went from being the kid, and like, oh, I'm the adult in the family now. And then so I've been going through kind of these things. But yesterday was the first day someone else referred to me as a crone. And at first, so okay, like it's like, eek, somebody just called me old. And see, like for years, I've always been a person who like looks younger than I am. It's kind of a point of pride. It's genetics. But I went through cancer treatment, and it's aged me. And so, so I'm like, okay, I'm not like gonna be like everybody thinking I'm like younger than I am. Okay, so this is the thing. But anyway, so if somebody calls me a crone, and I'm like, oh, but then I was like driving home thinking about it. I was like, hey, that feels good. And I like felt this power. And then so, like last night, I realized it's like, oh. And so, like, just different things I've been doing in my life. I'm like feeling like, hey, I'm arriving. I'm like leading the pagan group, and I'm like hitting my stride. You know, I've been doing it for a few years. And just other things have been going on. I'm like, yeah, I'm hitting my stride. And then I was like, wait a second. I'm moving into a new stage in my life, and now I have to figure out, how do I become a crone? And so, like, you're talking about your fruit. And I'm like, okay, now I have new fruit that I have to figure out.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that if you like, even in being a spiritual person, I mean, I continuously research, read, and you know, if I call myself a spiritual person, then I need to act like that. I need to present that. I need to be that. And like you talk about crone, yeah, there's a lot of words that we throw around. You know, I'm a guru. Well, what the heck is a guru? I don't know. Maybe I have to go read. What's a guru? What does that mean? What is, you know, if someone is, let's just say someone's a pastor of a church, they know what that means. They know what that job description is. And so really, we should all start to pursue what's our job description of ourselves. And as we evolve, we learn more about that. And you can really step into that and say, wow, I'm really living this now. I'm being it. And that goes back to what I was talking about. Your spiritual self is all about being the energy. Be it. And if it's not your energy, then push it back. Find the energy that fits with you. Find the energy that who you are and how you're grounded. But that's amazing, because now you're saying, if someone called me a crone, they're seeing something in me. I want to learn more about that. And I'd like to represent that if that's what being a crone means. I mean, you might read and find out that it's not what you want to be. But that's how we discover ourselves, is we start to research and look, and we learn about our personality, and we learn about who we are. And I know that the more we practice it, the stronger you become. And so, more power to you.
Yeah.
And you found a group that works for you. But here's what I love about this. That group is within the church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I love that. There's other groups in there that don't resonate, but you didn't leave the church. You stayed with the group that resonates you. And that's part of it too, is that I've noticed in a lot of religious organizations, it's just one big group. And there aren't a lot of subgroups. There may be, but you'll never hear them speak it. And so that's where a lot of times the judgment comes in. And so it sounds like to me, in this organization, you have different groups that may have different beliefs, but you're all in one place.
Yeah.
And to me, that's kind of the way I think even if our world could be that way, we have different groups, but we're not. And I mean, you said some people were maybe not kind to you, but that's what we want to eliminate. Be what you are, but don't be unkind to others. Accept the other groups. So, yeah, this is where we are. This is about be okay where you are, but don't make others wrong because they don't believe like you do, because that's unfair. Anyone that has an opinion on something, there's always an opposite opinion. There's a different opinion, and both sides could be right. And that's something to think about. Both sides could be right. So it's just, I was inspired because I saw a lot of anger. I saw a lot of self-dissatisfaction. I saw a lot of narcissism in this post that this person that I knew. And I was like, wow, I never saw that before. I never saw that. So it is important to really understand what works for you, what energy feels good to you, what energy doesn't feel good to you, and ask yourself why. And could it be different? Could I make a difference? And or should I just not even attempt to be in that energy, especially if someone starts being unkind to you and making you out to be wrong. So thank you. And we have to honor that, but also sometimes people that are not perfect, they use that as a way to continue to be the way they are, because they use it as an excuse. It's like someone that says, I just can't get up and get to work on time, and it's just, I have all these issues, and I'm like, that's fine, but that's not an excuse for not being at work on time. I'm not going to accept that excuse. You have to work on yourself. But I do agree with you, and sometimes what happens is we don't call these people out. We should call them out. If someone's really not kind to you, that wasn't very kind.
I did that the other day, and everything you're saying is letting people let you be you, and I'm going to be me. And what happened, and a lot of this can be attributed to relationships, because I'm not the same person I was at 20, and now I'm not the same person I am now. And whoever I was with for the first part of that life, he changed, I changed, and when I didn't change, I wasn't authentic to myself.
Yes.
So then that life was that life, and now I was in a relationship for 13 years trying to reestablish what I love about being in a relationship, but ignored red flags. And then as time went on and life happened, I made a decision and left that relationship 2 or 3 years ago, tried to reestablish the friendship, again, knowing people are innately good people, but at the same time, that balance of what do I need? What do I need from a friendship? What do I need from a relationship? What do I need for myself? And the other day, just in a nutshell, because he said something, or he texted something, and it just triggered me major, and I thought, oh my, again, that wasn't the first time it ever, I had been triggered, but I responded in a way that I'm learning to respond, and I called him on it, and I basically, again, learning, I do a lot of reading and stuff, but I just texted back, did you mean for that to be hurtful? And he goes, what? And he texted back and went, oh no, maybe sarcasm. And then I texted back, hurtful and sarcastic, I don't like either one. So that was my most honest, again, I'm learning to be honest in my communication with him and everyone else, again, protecting my energy and my peace in the world. But again, I was authentic to myself, and that was just a new muscle, a new thing that I'm learning to do, and acting on it, not just ignoring the text, letting it go, get on with my day, do what I would normally have done, and then not responding. I responded in kind. I was not ugly about it. I was not, so, and it did, it's again, with the relationship, everything you're saying, I can do toward, attribute toward relationships with people, family and or whatever, but yeah, I'm just being authentic to myself. I'm being true to myself and acting on it, and again, being open to conversations where I can learn and take what works for me, let the rest go, because not everybody's the same. But yeah, I just kind of, I love this group. I'm so glad to be here. But yeah, it's just it's an awesome environment of learning and just feeling good.
Yes.
Because how do you feel? If you listen to how you feel and really, you'll know. You'll either pay attention to it or you won't, and you get what you get either way. But again, it's a muscle, it's a practice, and sometimes you just have to be. I'm hearing like sometimes I don't know what to do. Just be. Just pause. Just breathe and all that. So.
It is, and this is about relationship. Believe it or not, it's about relationship with yourself, relationship with spirit, relationship with others, whether it's work or personal or family or friends. It's all about relationship. And also, too, when I know for a fact that when you don't speak your truth in a moment, that's really truth. If someone says something or something happens, then when you get home, resentment starts. Because now you're saying, I should have said that. I should have spoken up. I should have done something. But that's also fear. It's fear of being true to ourselves. It's fear of sharing our true feelings. And that's also being vulnerable. Because we think if I share my true feelings, they might really be unkind to me. What if they're really not kind to me now because I just shared my true feelings? Although I found in most cases, when you say, that made me feel really bad, or that made me feel as though you didn't respect me, it usually shifts the conversation and shifts it in a positive way. And you have to really learn what's come into a place, and they're already angry. You can see they have a lot of anger. And so they're very short with people, and they're kind of flippant, and they sort of they're protecting themselves. A lot of people say, oh gosh, they're really, arrogant, and I'm like, no, they're protecting themselves. But you realize that sometimes if someone is doing something that's really rude, sometimes you have to say, I'm sorry, but that was really rude, And sometimes people go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Because they really didn't realize it. But that's because they've gotten away with it for so long, and no one calls them on it. And no one actually steps forward and says, I don't think you realize how you're being right now. And it is making a lot of people feel uncomfortable. So thank you for that feedback, because that is definitely the direction that we're all moving, is learning how to have good relationship with ourselves, with spirit, and with others. and think about the next time that you feel frustrated or angry or something comes up. How do you want to present yourself in that situation? Or maybe you want to speak out about something, but I think we should all speak out about things if we're very strong in our beliefs. That's okay, but we don't have to do it in an angry way.
And
We
sometimes you
don't
just
have to.
remove yourself. Like, don't pick up the phone and call somebody just because that's what you always did.
Right.
If they're not feeding it, if they're not feeding you positive energy or whatever, I've learned just to protect my peace, and I just don't call those people.
Right.
They may call me and I respond, but I'm not reaching out for that. Just 'cause
Yes.
it just doesn't,
And it's also called discernment. And discernment is being able to share and to speak and to feel, well, I say feel, but to react with no emotion. To speak what you want to speak, but you don't put emotion behind it. And, someone says something to you and you go, okay, that's fine. Maybe you're right, but you have no emotion attached to it. Whereas, you might become angry or upset or want to tell them, that's wrong. But that's discernment. Discernment is not being connected emotionally to an outcome. And the more we discern, the stronger we become. Well, thank you for being here today. I just kind of realized as I was thinking about that situation, I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about that. Because I know that's something that we're all encountering. And it's just, I guess the last words would be be kind. Be kind to others. Speak kindly, and respect others and all opinions. Respect